Hey, what's up, guys? I'm Wholesome Joe, and welcome back once again to the sixth installment of this tutorial on how to build your own Arduino-based Ghostbusters Proton Pack lights and sound. I know you guys have been biting at the bit for me to release the next video in this series because you're all trying to get your Proton Packs done, and with a couple of days before Christmas, I thought this would be the perfect time to release a new video so you'll have something to do over the holidays because a lot of people are off work and will have time to do something like messing with a bunch of electronics. So I figured I should do another video, and we're getting to the end of this thing. I know you guys are ready for me to get to the finished product, and we're almost there, but we got a few more videos to go before we get there. Now this one is going to be about the sound of the Proton Pack, and I will go ahead and tell you, preface this by saying that of all the parts and things that you have to do in this process, the sound is by far the most difficult. And I know what you're thinking, you know, the soldering and all the tiny wires and things that you have to work with is also difficult, but I promise you, without a shadow of the doubt, I had the most issues with the sound. And actually that's a lot of the reason why it's taking me so long to do these videos, is because I actually had so many issues with the sound that I had to kind of stop and troubleshoot all of that to make sure that when I did the video for you guys, that hopefully I had all the kinks worked out so that you could avoid the issues that I had. So if you go back, way back to the first video where I talk about the parts list, I mentioned something called a DF player mini, which is what the sound is being played from. It's basically just a tiny MP3 player that has an SD card in it that you've copied all of the sounds that are being triggered by the Arduino. Now, in the original video, in the original parts list that Michael actually gives, he suggests buying the DF Player Mini from a place called DigiKey because that is the only way to guarantee that you will get a genuine one. And that is what I did, because a lot of people were reporting having issues with the knockoffs that you can get from Amazon. So that's the first thing to remember. Make sure that you get your DF player from DigiKey. However, I had so many issues with mine that I came to the conclusion that perhaps my DF Player Mini was faulty and ended up buying a second one. I did find out later that there was actually nothing wrong with my DF Player Mini. I was just doing it wrong. And now I have two, so I can just do another one later. But with all that being said, make sure that you follow this video as closely as you can for the sound, because it's going to be super important. Because if you don't do something exactly the way that you need to do it, in this case, it's not going to work and you're going to have issues. And I had a lot of them, and I'm going to try to talk you through them to make sure that you can avoid the same issues that I had. If you happen to run into any issues in doing this, feel free to leave a comment. You can message me on social media. If you're my friend on social media, you can feel free to message me. I will try to answer the questions as best as I can. So the way this video is going to work is going to be very similar to the last video. I'm going to go over the wiring diagram for the sound. I'm not going to actually show you how to put the wires in the boards because it's easier to show you how to do it on a diagram and then just follow the diagram. The reason for that is because the wires are so small that if I try to show you me putting them in the pins, it's so difficult to see that you'll just get confused. And there's multiple ways to do it, as I said before, so you don't have to do it exactly the way I'm showing you, as long as the fundamentals are there and you understand why you're doing it. So there's some tricky parts to the sound, and this is one of the few times where I am going to be using resistors because there's no way around it. You have to use the resistors or you will have issues. The other things that's going to be important are the ordering of the files for the sound, which I'm going to show you how I did that. I ran into issues with that too. It's very finicky. You have to do it a very specific way or it's not going to work. So we're just going to jump right into it. So I will see you in just a second. Okay guys, welcome back. Here's our diagram. Let's jump right into it, shall we? Okay, so this looks kind of daunting at first, and I promise you it is not as difficult as my crude diagram would lead you to believe. Now, you can definitely just follow the diagram that is in the Arduino code GitHub that I have linked in the description. You can definitely just follow that diagram if you so desire. I kind of wanted to break this down into something that was a bit simpler to understand and wasn't so much all crammed into one. And a lot of the reason for that is because I'm not doing the rumble motor nor the smoke kit right now, so I didn't feel the need to include those things. And I've taken a few shortcuts so that I can show you this easier than you having to see all of the wires. So you're going to notice that there's going to be some things missing. I'm going to explain what those things are, and I'm going to explain what you need to have connected and why you need to have them connected. So make sure that you're paying attention. If you need to rewind the video and go back to make sure that you got something, make sure that you do that, because I'm going to be going through a lot of things, and I don't want you to miss anything. So the first thing we're going to go over is how to wire up the DF player and the Arduino. So you're already going to have your Arduino on, let's zoom in here. You're already going to have your Arduino on your breadboard, like so. And so you're going to see here, you're going to see here that you're going to have all of these wires, and I've donated these yellow wires. These are the wires that are going to the pins for the switches and the lights. So you just kind of need to ignore those for right now, because we've already connected our lights to the Arduino and we haven't gotten to the switches yet. But these are all of the pins for the switches and the lights. So just kind of ignore those for now. You probably should already have those connected. If you don't already have them connected, then you can connect them. But in order for this to work, we don't need the switches right now because it'll automatically start up as soon as it gets power. So all you need to do is know that these are to the lights and the switches. Then on the Arduino side, we're going to have our VIN going to one side of the rails on the breadboard, and then we're going to have our ground going from the ground pin of the breadboard to the ground pin on the DF player mini. That's important, so remember that. Then we're going to have our power coming into the breadboard through our buck converter, which you should already have connected from your talent cell battery. So this is going to be going to our talent cell battery, and then we're going to have our buck converter wired up with our positive and negative, and we're going to have already stopped this down to 5 volts because the Arduino can only be powered with 5 volts. So we already did that, I believe, in one of the other videos. If not, remind me and I will do a video specifically on how to wire up these buck converters, but I feel like we already did that. I don't watch my own videos. Anyway, so make sure that you have this stop down to 5 volts, and it's going to be powered via the rails like so, just like we did in the last video. And you're going to need to bridge both sides because you have things connected on both sides. If you don't already, and I kind of did this after the fact, I used fritzing to make this with, but then I realized I don't have enough parts, so I just brought it into Photoshop and did it the old-fashioned way by just using some brushes. So that'll be your power, and then you have these other 2 orange wires here. These are actually going, these are on pins A4 and A5. These are actually going to the bar graph, which I haven't shown you how to do yet. So that's also going to be in a video by itself, how to wire up the bar graph. So you can just ignore these for now. We will add those later. These don't have anything to do with the sound, so we don't necessarily need them right now. The 2 most important connections that you have to make, and the ones that I had the most trouble with, are from the Arduino pins D10 and D11 to the RX and TX pins on the DF Player Mini. Now, the RX and TX pins on my DF Player Mini are not labeled, but they are in this order. So it goes VCC, RX, and TX, even though they're not labeled. You can definitely look at this to see what the pin outs are, and you can just follow it that way, even though they're not written on the board itself. And also, you have your VCC on the DF Player Mini also going to the rails as well. And then, as I was saying, the most important connections are these RX and TX. And these are important because this is the only two places in this particular part of the build where I'm going to use resistors, because you have to, in order to prevent there being a lot of noise from the speaker. I had a lot of buzzing, and this didn't get rid of all of it, but it got rid of most of it. So basically what you're going to want to do is, that the RX pin, which is this gray wire, is going to D11, pin D11. So what you need to do is take a resistor, put one end of the resistor in pin D11. It can be in any of these in this row, but going up and down, but it needs to be in one end of it needs to be in pin 11, and then you can put the other end of it in any of these other pins over on the other side. I went, I think, 4 pins over. You can do 4. I think you can probably do 3, but 4 just seemed right to me, so that's what I used. And then you take the other end of your gray wire and you put it in a corresponding pin, parallel up and down vertically to the pin that you put the other end of the resistor in. So for example, I put one end of it on D11, at the pin on D11, and then I put the other end of it 4 pins down, and then I just put the wire in the corresponding pin just below it. And that means that those connections will be in sequence with each other. So that's RX. TX, same thing. It's this green wire, comes all the way back over, goes to D10. And the way I did that was I put one side of the resistor in a pin on D10, then I went 4 pins over, put the other side of the resistor in, and then put my wire up and down parallel in another pin, so that it can connect to my resistor. Make sure that you don't have these resistors in the same holes up and down. You don't want these cross connected. You want them in separate holes. So you see how I don't have either of these resistors in the same pins going up and down. They're in different ones. Hopefully that makes sense. If it's confusing to you, because it was kind of confusing to me, you can definitely leave a comment in the description, or leave a comment below, and I will try to answer and help you out with that. That is the most important part of this. You got to get that right, or it is not going to work correctly. So back over to the DF player, we have a couple of more connections, and there's not a lot of connections to this, so it's not as difficult as it seems. So then you also have your ground from the other side. A lot of people say you only need to ground the one pin, but I had issues without grounding both of them. So on the other side of the DF player is another ground pin, and I'm running that from the DF player to my audio adapter is ground. And I will get into the details of that in just a second, but that is where the other ground from the DF player is going. And then you finally, or you also have this busy pin that you also need to have connected, and I have a wire going from it to pin D12. And that's the other reason why it's important that you don't cross connect these resistors, because you still need to be able to put this orange wire in pin D12. And as you can see, my resistors are not in any of the D12 pins, so I have room to put my wire there. So then coming back over here, I have my speaker. That's the last thing that I need to have connected. And the DF Player Mini actually has a built-in amplifier, which is what these speaker 1 and speaker 2 connections or pins are for. But we're not going to be using those because the amp on the DF Player Mini is very tiny and weak and will only power like a 3-watt speaker. However, if you were testing this and you just wanted to, you know, hook up a speaker really quickly, you don't have an audio amplifier yet or whatever the case may be, you can definitely use these speaker pins to connect a tiny speaker to test this with. But since we're not going to be using that in the final version, I didn't think it was relevant to even show you that, but I figured it would be okay to mention it. If you need to just do some quick testing with a speaker, you can definitely just plug a speaker directly into those and should work. But instead, we're going to be using these DAC left and right channels, which are going to be our digital audio outs. And so those are going to go to our audio amplifier. Now, the one I'm using specifically is a 50-watt amplifier. It has a potentiometer so that you can adjust the volume. And it also has speaker outs so you can connect it to a speaker, and also has your power terminals right here in the middle, and there's some other connections too. There's even a 3.5 millimeter jack, so if you wanted to plug a phone or some kind of MP3 player up directly to this, you could. I don't think I'm going to use that now. I thought I was going to use it before, but I don't really see a reason to use it now that I have the DF player, and you can literally put hundreds of songs on it if you have a big enough SD card. So I don't think I'll ever find myself using that, but you could if you wanted to. Now, one thing to remember, if you use the same amplifier board that I have given you in the parts list, you do not have to use the same one. There are lots of different ones you can use. They all work mostly the same. You might have to look at the documentation if you get one that is different than mine, but they're all going to have mostly the same connections, which is going to be your power, which is right here. Your well, that's actually not your power. I'm sorry, that's your the digital audio in. The power is over here on the right on these green connections. They're going to have a digital audio in and a power connection and speaker connections. Pretty much all of them are going to have that. This one in particular uses 12 volts of power. So I actually have to send 12 volts from my battery directly to this amplifier board in order for it to work. I can't send power from the buck converters because I've stepped it down to 5 volts. So you're going to have to split the power from your Talent Cell battery, which is already 12 volts. The Talent Cell battery is already 12 volts. So all you need to do is send a direct connection from the battery to the power and ground connections on your audio amplifier so that it is getting 12 volts of power. Make sure that you don't connect this in conjunction with anything else because it won't work right. It needs its own source of 12 volt power. So then you got your speaker connections, which is your standard. These are basically just screw terminals, so you just shove the wires in there and screw them down. They're marked positive and negative. This is a stereo amplifier, so technically I could put 2 speakers. I'm only using 1, but if you were going to use 2 speakers, you would basically just plug the other one into the other side. So this is left and right. I've just got one going into the right. You could put it in the left one if you wanted to. I just chose that one because that was the one I had access to and it was easier. The only other thing I did to this was I didn't have this connector piece or a cable with this type of connector on it. My nose is running. This connector piece. So I basically desoldered this plastic housing and just took it completely off. So all I had was the regular little pinhole so I could solder wires directly to this. So I'll show you that. You'll see how I have mine wired, but my wires are going directly to the board. There's no connector piece. You could definitely use the connector piece if you want to splurge and buy that wire with the connector, but I just didn't have time. So I just desoldered this piece, so the plastic part comes off, and then I was left with just the pins, and I just soldered the wires directly to it. And those wires are going to be the left and the right from the DF Player Mini, and then that second ground on the other side. That's important. The ground is going to go to the ground on your audio input, and it doesn't matter which one is left and which one is right. This is just the ones I chose. As far as I know, if you run into troubles, let me know, but it didn't seem to matter which of these wires was the red one and which one was the black one. Those are just the colors I used. So once you have all of that connected, you are going to actually power the DF player itself with another buck converter that has been stopped down to 5 volts. So you're going to have your talent cell battery with basically 3 connections coming off of it. You're going to have a set of wires that's going to a buck converter stopped down to 5 volts that is going to your Arduino, and then you're going to have another one that's split off going to another buck converter that is connected to your DF Player Mini, because both of those things require 5 volts of power. And I learned that the DF Player Mini just does not like to work properly if you have it powered by the same power source that is powering your Arduino and your lights. So I just have the power source for the DF Player Mini completely separate from the Arduino and the lights, because you just run into issues if you try to power them together. And then you're going to have a third set of power leads coming out of your battery that is going to be 12 volts with no buck converter involved, going to your audio amplifier. Once you have all of this connected, you are ready to start adding files to your DF Player Mini's SD card, and that's what I'm going to show you how to do next. Okay, so now that you have your wiring done, it is time to do the files and the sound files that are going to go on your SD card. I'm using a 32 gig SD card. I don't think you can use any bigger than that. I think you're limited to 32 gigs, which is still plenty of space. But you can use any mini SD card that will fit inside the DF player. And I think I got one right here. This is what you need, one of these really tiny SD cards. This one is 16 gigs. You can use 16, you can use 4, you can use 8, you can use 32, which is what I used. And then you're going to come back to the GitHub, which is linked in the description, and you're going to scroll down until you get to this link here, which is going to be a repository of all of the sounds that Mike has already compiled for you to use. And then you're just going to download these. It's a zip file. Once you have it downloaded, you're going to unzip it into a folder. If you don't know how to do that, all you do is right click. I'll just use this one for example. I've got 7-zip, so you can just right click it and choose extract files to that folder. I just put them in the folder that it's already named, which is fine, and it's going to give you a folder called GB sounds. I'm actually going to use this one instead for this. So we're going to come into this folder. So basically on your SD card, you need to do everything in sort of a specific order. So anytime you copy anything to this SD card, you need to format it, or at least the first time. The very first time you do this, format the card, and either copy all of these files all at once. And honestly, that's just what I would do. I would never try to add, especially not to the sound effects. So you have 2 folders here. One of them is going to be called 01 and the other one is called MP3. And it's kind of confusing because if you open the MP3 folder, you'll notice that all of the sound effect files are actually in the MP3 folder, even though most people think of music when they think of MP3. And then the music is actually going to be in this folder called 01. And you just, you open it up, and there's all the music that I've added. I've actually added more music than, or actually there was no music in this folder. So when you download your file, it's going to look more like this one, where there's, well, this one has stuff in it too. This is going to be blank. So if your 01 folder has nothing in it, that's fine, because you have to add stuff to that. Mine just has stuff in it because I've already added the sounds. So what I did was I downloaded a bunch of MP3s, wherever you're going to get them from is fine. For the music that I decided to put, most of it is Ghostbusters theme stuff. I've got some 80s music, just whatever you want, doesn't matter. It can be whatever you want, but remember that it needs to be an MP3. You might be able to do waves. I haven't tried. I know the sound effects are waves, but for space purposes, I would just use MP3s for the music. Just make it easy. The important thing to remember, though, is that in order for these sounds to play and be triggered by the buttons on your wand, you have to have these labeled or named in a specific way. So for example, you see how all of these are 001, 002, 003. So you can have 001 whatever you want. So this could say 001 song if I wanted it to. It doesn't matter what it says, as long as it has 001 and then a corresponding label. These could actually just be 001, 002 with nothing, but I want to know what they are, so I just added something to tell me what the songs are, and that way I can put them in the order. The order in which these are numbered is the order in which they will play. So when you press your button on your wand to switch tracks, it's going to go to the next track. So if you want to put these in a specific order, this is how you do that, by these numbers. This is how they have to be named. You cannot name them in any other way. You cannot leave out these numbers. They have to be here. It can say 001 Haunted. It can say 001 McKenna Grace. It can say 001 Joe. Whatever you want it to say, as long as it has 001, 002, 003, and so forth. What I did was copied every single one of my tracks into this folder, and then I went back and renamed all of these after I had copied all of them. I don't know if that had anything to do with it or whether that helped it work or not, but that's the way I did it. That's just for this the music. So coming back over to the MP3 folder, we'll look inside here. These are all the sounds that are already going to be included with the files from Mike's download. So when you download that file that I showed you, these sounds are already all going to be in there, and these are all the Proton Pack sounds, including the video game, as well as a custom Christmas one that I think that he made. You can add other sounds to this. You can change any of these sounds if you want to, but you have to be very careful, because if you change the order or start copying things over things, you're going to run into the issues, because the way these files are ordered and numbered is how they're triggered by the Arduino. And once you start making changes to this stuff, you'll run into issues. So my suggestion, if you decide to change any of these sounds, what I would do is create a whole nother folder, change or add the new sound that you want to change into the folder, and then change the name of the sound you want to change to one of these existing names. So for example, if I wanted to change the sound, or if I wanted to change the boot up sound, for example, I didn't want to use his sound. What I would do is I would create another folder. I would take the sound I want to use. I would copy it to the folder and rename it to this, to 001 boot up. Once I had changed all the files I intended to change, then I would copy all of the files all at once, and then I would copy them back to another folder, and then I would format my SD card and then copy all of it at once. You don't want to come in here and try to copy one file at a time to your SD card, because it screws with the order. This is very important. I ran into a lot of issues with this, and if you don't want to run into the same issues, I would definitely take what I'm saying to heart. So don't go in here and start copying and pasting all willy-nilly, or it's going to mess with the order. You're going to want to do it in a very specific way. Like I said, go in, create another folder, change the sound, change the rename it, and then copy everything back to a new folder, and then format your SD card, copy the whole folder. So what do you copy to the SD card? Well, that's a good question. What you're going to be copying to the SD card is just these two folders. So you don't want to copy the GB sounds folder. You just want to copy these two files right here, copy, and then whatever your SD card is, I don't have mine connected right now. You're just going to paste those into the root of your SD card. They should not be in any other folder. They should be just like they are right here, but on your SD card. So once you have all of those files copied to your card, you're going to take your card, put it back in your DF player, and then hopefully, if you did everything right, you will have sound. And you will be able to test that once you have your switches connected, which I'm going to do another video on how to wire up your switches. The switches are really easy, so you might be able to figure that on your own, but I'm going to do a video on it anyway. But this will at least allow you to get your sound up and running, because it is the hardest part of this, in my humble opinion. So once you have your files copied over, go ahead, like I said, put the SD card in your DF player, and if you turn it on, the DF player should light up when it's playing a sound. So if it doesn't light up, then you know you have something wrong. If you don't hear a sound and it doesn't light up, then you know something is incorrect. If it does light up and you don't hear anything, then you know that you have something wired incorrectly, because the DF player should light up, and also you should hear the sound if it is playing and operating like it is supposed to. So I'm going to do a quick demo of my sound so that you can see what this is supposed to sound like and how it's supposed to operate once you have all this done, and then we will wrap up this video. And then next video will probably be the bar graph light, and then we're going to start soldering all this stuff to PCBs so that we can put it in our proton bags. So I'll see you next time. Okay, so here we go. I have all my sound already wired up. I got my SD card in there already, and it is, you know, connected to my Arduino. You can ignore all these other wires because they're just to the switches and to my lights. I already have this all wired up, so I didn't want to undo it to show you this. And I even have my bar graph already wired up, but that's going to be in another video. And I have my speaker wired up. This is the speaker that I have in my parts list. It's a pretty decent sounding speaker. It might not sound too great on this video. And then I have my buck converters. I have two of them. They're both stopped down to 5 volts, and they're going to the Arduino and the DF player. And then I have a third set of wires coming directly from my Talent Cell battery, just like I suggested or specify that you do. This just split off coming to my amplifier. So I'm going to go ahead and fire this up. And I got my battery right here, and you'll notice the lights on my amps come on, and then the light on my DF player came on because the sound was playing, and of course I have the lights going. So those, and then I have a volume control, so I can turn the volume up a little bit. You can hear the hum. And so then since I already, this will be all you'll be able to hear if you don't have the switches connected. This is all it's going to do. It's going to play the startup noise and go into the hum if you don't have switches already connected. And I'm obviously going to show you how to do that, but for now I'll just run through the sounds really quick. And I've got this is going to be our switch for the firing. So there's that. And then if you want to start playing music, then all you need to do is take this other switch that's going to be our theme switch, just flip it, and then that's going to make your firing button be a music player. And so now all of the files that we put on our SD card are going to play in the order that I've saved them. So saving the dance first, and then of course the Ghostbusters theme song. Okay, so then if I want to go back to pack mode, I'm going to switch that switch back. And then we're back to pack mode. But if I wanted to change the theme, I would take this other firing switch. Actually, I take that back. I gotta flip this back. And then I take this switch. And now we've changed modes, which also changes our sound effects. And then I'm going to flip this back, because if I press it now, press the other button now, it's going to change music again. But then I'll have completely different sounds because I'm in a different mode. So yeah, if you do everything like I instructed, you should have working sound. Like I showed you in the video, you got to have your blue light on your DF player. You can hear the sound is playing, which is why I have the blue light. So let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in the next video.